Hello, I'm Hagen Rogers with Watermark Advisors, and today we're going to wrap up our series on fumbles and landmines with part 3. Now, I have, over the last 2 videos, explained what fumbles and landmines are. They're mistakes made by sellers that we see over and over again, the same mistakes that we pointed out. We're going to continue and wrap these up today. So the third landmine is not preparing for the eye of the storm. That is the trifecta, which the seller experiences down here in the transaction phase when they enter into exclusivity with one buyer. They have to go through the onerous process of due diligence with that buyer, which is very disruptive, while continuing to run their business and run it at a high level, while negotiating with the corporate attorneys, the M&A attorneys, which gets challenging with the purchase agreements, the schedules. And this combination of factors is the most stressful time for the seller. And what often happens is there are red flag issues that show up many times in financial due diligence, but other areas that causes the seller to retreat to address those red flags. And the buyer may decide to increase their leverage, use those red flags as leverage over the seller, or they may be so significant that the buyer walks away from the deal. So how do you avoid red flag issues to show up? We say that early in the preparation phase, you simulate buyer's due diligence at a higher level to identify problems that show up. And there are many problems that can show up in buyer's due diligence. There are about 10 to 12 work streams that are going on simultaneous. So if you can identify those red flags, take care of them before you get to real due diligence, it is a game changer in holding your leverage. What are some of the issues? When financial due diligence, you may need to recast your financials. Perhaps you're on a cash basis and you need to move those financials over to accrual basis. Maybe your revenue recognition techniques are outdated, or maybe we often see the inventory processes and the cost of goods sold that correspond with inventory. There could be mistakes made that can sometimes be big swings affecting profitability. And then on the legal side, getting these docs in order that you don't need on a day-to-day basis, like your organizational, your governance docs, your ownership docs, vendor agreements, customer and distributor agreements, licenses, permits, insurance policies, getting all this in order, making sure everything is, your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Very important to try to get this juggernaut of due diligence taken care of so that when you're in real due diligence, you kind of keep and hold that leverage. So fumble 2 is evaluating buyers thoroughly. How do you know you're negotiating with an acquirer that will reach and give you the best terms for the company you've built and poured your life into? What defines the best buyer? Most of the time, the seller wants to walk away with the best terms, and that's usually defined by these major issues here like valuation, payment timing and mix, post-closing risks and insurance, and post-closing roles and incentives for you and your team. But to evaluate buyers, it's much more than that. So how do you evaluate buyers? We often put together these, we call them tear sheets on each potential buyer that forces our clients to kind of look at each one before we even approach them. What's been their acquisition history? Are they a serial acquirer or an infrequent acquirer? That's going to matter greatly to what kind of dialogue and process that buyer runs. What's their track record? If they've made many acquisitions, what's their success rate? What do sellers say? How did they handle the companies? Were the companies that were acquired successful after they were under the buyer's watch and ownership? What source of financing do they have? Are they large enough to acquire a company like yours? Are they in good financial condition themselves as buyers? What type of buyer are they? Are they a strategic buyer where they are buying you for strategic purposes? That's going to bring synergies, which typically are good things for getting to best outcomes. Maybe they're private equity backed And you would be an add-on acquisition. That's slightly different than being a platform acquisition acquired if you're acquired by a PE fund. And so all of that matters. The cultural differences between you and what kind of culture are these buyers executing their strategy on? How do they value businesses? These are questions you need to force yourself to ask or work with your advisor to help you think through before you step too far out on the bridge. It makes a big difference. So finally, Fumble 3, reducing or eliminating contingent payments. It's a big deal because in 2023, 44% of closed transactions included a contingent payment or earnout. So you sell your company for $20 million, maybe you get $15 million cash at close and $5 million as an earnout tied to the future performance. It's not under your watch anymore, but the revenues for years 1, 2, or 3 post-close, maybe the EBITDA, maybe the gross profit. That's how you're going to get measured, and the rest of your $5 million is going to be tied to that performance. The time frame for earnouts can be 1 to 3 years, and the percent of the total deal can range from, say, 5% all the way up to 30, 35%. So this is a meaningful issue. And we know that valuation gap, or the differences in valuation between buyer and seller, is the number one reason why deals don't close. So it's a major issue that you need to be thinking about. And so what I hear often is an owner will tell me as they're starting the process, Hagen, there are only a handful of buyers that I think are worthy or would be interested in buying my company. And when I hear that, my experience from doing this for 30 years is that you're setting yourself up for a fumble. Why do I say that? Because for the seller, the process is always about leverage. It's always about holding the leverage you have. So when you limit the field of potential buyers as a choice, even maybe for good reasons, you're reducing your leverage in negotiating contingency payments. So, and you're often, as a result, overlooking some really credible buyers that are just not in your mind. You don't know that they would be potential acquirers, and maybe they're in a contingent market, a different region of the country, but it matters a lot. And so limiting your deal to a small, what I call a club-like deal of maybe 4 or 5 potential buyers is even worse than running what I would call a negotiated sell, which is a one-on-one negotiation where you've given up. In that case, you've given up a lot of leverage, but at least you have the card to play that if I don't reach good terms with you, I'm going to go out and run a broader process. But when you've run a club deal, you're stuck. You can't then say, if you don't get to good terms with contingency payments, I'm going to go to a broader deal. Why didn't you do that to begin with? Or I'm going to run a negotiated sell with one buyer. Who and why aren't they at the table now? So you've really boxed yourself in when you choose this club-like deal structure. So as I wrap up this series, I want to leave you with a few points I've been trying to express and get across. One is that business owners, as smart as you are, as successful as you are, and accomplished as you are, you don't live on this bridge. And this bridge is a combination of skills, expertise, steps, and processes that are very unique. And guess what? The buyer does live on this bridge. They have a team that live and camp out on this bridge. So the skills that have made you successful as an owner, CEO, are not automatically transferred to successfully traversing across this bridge. It is a complicated process. And frankly, you only want to do it once and do it well. You don't want to have to walk out onto the bridge only to turn around and walk back. It is, for many reasons, it's not what you want to experience. And unfortunately, about 20 to 25% of the time, that is the outcome, that owner has to turn back. And we don't want that. It's not a good outcome. So to do this well, you need guides. But it's not just one guy. It's not just an M&A attorney. It's not just an accountant. It's not just an investment banker like myself. It's a team effort of a group of experts, including perhaps integration experts and others in due diligence, that will work together to bring and get you to the best outcome so that you can step off this bridge and realize that was difficult, more difficult than I thought, but I made great decisions, and look at the outcome for me, for my family, and for the company, the legacy that I built for my people, for my clients, and the community. So thank you so much for watching this series, and again, I hope you found it valuable.